Where do the Georgia Bulldogs sit with their top remaining targets on the defensive line? That's what we're talking about in today's video. Basically going to break down what Georgia's class could look like on the defensive line in the 2026 class. There's a lot to talk about. There could be some good news on the defensive line coming very soon for Georgia in this class. They've got several guys on campus right now for an official visit, so a lot to talk about. But first, I want to talk about the guys currently on the commit list, right? They've got two on board, Seven Cloud and Carter Lucky on the commit list. So let's break down those two. Then I'll talk about where they stand with some of their biggest targets along the defensive line. So again, Seven Cloud, the #1 JUCO defensive lineman in the country. He was originally out of McEachern High School, committed to Georgia, had to go the JUCO route, and he is doing a great job. 6'3", 325 pounds, and the Georgia staff has kept in touch with them. They wanted to keep him on board, and now they have him committed in the 2026 class. Again, he's the #1 JUCO overall prospect in the country. Made 48 tackles last year for Butler Community College. I believe that's in Kansas. With 5.5 sacks, forced 2 fumbles, so he's active, he's productive, and he's getting to the quarterback. So they've got him on board, and then Carter Lucky, Lawson Lucky's younger brother. He's a defensive lineman, not a tight end, still out of Norcross. Big kid, 6'5", 275. As a sophomore in 2023, made 54 tackles, 29 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks. Lived in the backfield last year. Same type of numbers, right? 51 tackles, 24 tackles behind the line of scrimmage, 2 sacks. He's the number 30 defensive lineman. Number 306, I still believe, overall in the 2026 class. So these guys, I wouldn't call them elite, but they are solid, productive guys that the Georgia staff really likes. They've got those two on board, but they're still after some big names. James Johnson is a guy to keep an eye on, someone that I thought Georgia could be the team to beat for earlier, like kind of late in the winter, early in the spring. I'm not sure I feel the same way now. He's the number 2 defensive line prospect in the country out of Northwestern High School in Miami. I do think the Hurricanes are very much heavily involved there, as they should. South Florida kid, they're spending money left and right. I think NIL is a big deal here, especially as one of the best defensive linemen in the country. He was in Athens for a big official visit May 30th. I was told that went really well. Then he was at Miami, then Florida, and he'll be at Texas this weekend. So definitely watch out for the Longhorns. At the end of the day, he's very good, and a guy that, still has Georgia in his top group. Right now, I just don't see him in Athens or at Georgia in this class. PJ Dean is another guy they've been recruiting for a long time. His brother was former Georgia center Jared Wilson, who was off to the NFL, again, out of West Forsyth High School in North Carolina, not Georgia, North Carolina. 6'5", 255, so he's a little lighter for an interior guy. And these are all interior guys I'm talking about. We're not talking about these edge defenders that you hear a lot about. That'll be another video. We're talking about guys with their hands in the ground, taking on blocks on the interior, run stuffing guys who can also hopefully get after the quarterback if you're the Georgia staff. But PJ Dean, 6'5", 255, super athletic, a lot of muscle on him. A guy that Georgia, again, has been high on for a long time. I thought Georgia was the team to beat for a while. It looks like Ohio State is trending and have been for probably several weeks. But he was at Georgia June 6th. He was at Ohio State the week after. South Carolina is involved as well, but I do think Ohio State leads Georgia and South Carolina for the number 5 defensive line prospect in the country. So those are two highly ranked guys that I don't think are going to be at Georgia. However, in-state defensive lineman Ernest Rankings at Southwest DeKalb, I do think Georgia sits in a good position for him. He is the number 10 defensive line prospect in the country. Okay, so big deal around that top 100 player overall. Georgia, Auburn, Ohio State has jumped in the mix. I think they offered earlier this month, kind of late in the process, but when you get an offer from the Buckeyes, you listen, right? And that team immediately goes towards the top for a lot of these kids. Florida's in the mix as well, and I think Florida State too. He took an official visit there, but could be down to Georgia, Auburn, and Ohio State. Lean, but strong. He's 6'4", 260. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Georgia's been recruiting him for a long time. Quiet kid, doesn't really talk a ton, doesn't do a ton of media, but Georgia is definitely a team I can see him ending up at and could be Georgia's top-ranked defensive lineman in this class if you were to jump on board. But still, he's an Atlanta area kid, not a slam dunk to Georgia. Obviously, he's been to Auburn several times and at Ohio State. offer meant a lot. And I think he's been up there for an official visit. I thought I had that in my notes. I don't, but I do believe he was at Ohio State recently. So got to watch the Buckeyes. A guy that's on campus right now, not an in-state guy at all. Actually, he's from Sweden. He's got roots in Cameroon, is Valdin Sohn. He's a guy that has flown up kind of the rankings on the defensive line. 6'4", 320 pounds. He is taking his official visit to Georgia right now. I think the Gators are the team to beat. He's the number 14 defensive line prospect, number 3 prospect in Virginia. Again, he was playing in Sweden, made his way over to Virginia, I think towards the end of last fall. I think he played for a small school out in Virginia, but he is big and he's athletic. This kid grew up playing soccer, started to continue growing, put on a lot of muscle. He's been really good at the camp circuit this summer. He tore it up at a camp at South Carolina, I believe on Friday or Thursday before heading to Athens for his official visit. So this guy loves to work. He loves to compete. And Georgia is obviously in the mix. He's on campus right now. So he's a name to know and a guy who's still learning the game. So a big athlete who is learning and continuing to develop as a football player, but a lot of potential, no doubt about it. It wouldn't surprise me if his ranking continued to rise more and more, but he's a guy to keep an eye on. An in-state guy, super local, out of Clark Central in Athens, is Anthony Lonnan Jr. He's one of the fastest rising defensive line prospects really in the state. Had a really nice, solid year for Clark Central last year. 51 tackles, 13 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks. He's currently on his official visit to Georgia, so right down the street from him. Didn't have to leave Athens at all. So he's in town for a big official visit. Georgia Tech is in the mix. I'm sure Georgia State would love to have this kid, but Georgia Tech is in the mix. NC State, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. I think Mississippi State recently offered as well. So he's got some offers. He's just a 3-star guy, but he's got plenty of muscle. He's not super tall. He's 6'2", about 265. So little on the shorter end and a little on the lighter end, but again, 51 tackles, 13 tackles for a loss, and 8 sacks last year. So he is productive. He shed blocks. He can stop the run and can attack the quarterback. So he's a 3-star with a green arrow trending up. And, this is a guy that Georgia doesn't have to go too far for. They don't have to break the bank for, and a kid that, can stay close to home. So this is a solid option for them. He's a guy who can continue to put on more weight and muscle. They like that about him. He's made plays before, and his best football is way ahead of him. So if Georgia gives him the green light to jump on board, that's a guy who, could absolutely be in this class. And, there's a lot of potential there. So he may not have 5 stars next to his name, but those guys are going to cost a lot of money. And I'm telling you right now, this is not the class to be using NIL money on the defensive line. That is next year's class. Next year, 2027, loaded with freak athletes, not only on the edge, but on the defensive line. So that's the class where Georgia's going to load up on guys on the front 7. Some of the very best players in the country. And right now, the number 1 player in the country in 2027, LaDamian Guyton, is a kid out of Savannah, 5-star that Georgia needs to land. David Jacobs Jr., his father played at Georgia. He's out of Blessed Trinity in Roswell. He's an easy 5-star, but I'll talk about those guys for a long, long time. You may not know their names this second, but in 12 months from now, June 2026, we're going to be talking about those guys on a consistent basis. What I'm trying to say is you want to spend the NIL money on defensive linemen next year. This year, you're finding promising in-state guys who aren't going to break the bank, who want to be Bulldogs. And guys like Anthony Lonnan Jr. and Corey Howard, a kid out of Valdosta that they offered in the spring. He's announcing on Tuesday night. I can absolutely see him committing to Georgia in a few days if he gets the green light. He was at Georgia for an official visit June 13th, according to my notes, and was in Athens on Friday for a camp. Got some work in with Trey Scott. I think it's down to Georgia and Florida, but he'll make his announcement on Tuesday night, and I like where Georgia sits. This is a guy that they found during the spring. The offensive staff, Mike Bobo, Josh Crawford, they were down there, I think a couple times down at Valdosta, looking at some guys, and they said, you know what, this Corey Howard kid can play. What's his deal? And of course they ended up offering him, and now he's a guy that Georgia fans need to keep a very close eye on because he could jump on Georgia's commit list sooner than later. So Just a few guys to keep an eye on. Corey Howard, by the way, 6'6", 260. So he is a guy with size and a lot of promise. Didn't light up the stat sheet last year. In 9 games, he only had 36 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. Still getting better. This is a guy with a high ceiling who's, a first guy off the bus type that Georgia said, hey, we like his potential. We like his frame. He could be something. We can work with him. He's not going to break the bank. He's an in-state kid on the rise. So they might give him a shot. So if they give him the green light, looks like he could be jumping on board Tuesday night. We will follow that recruitment over the next few days, see if anything changes. But, there are some promising in-state guys that could be leaning Georgia's way. They may not sign a 5-star, but there's a chance they sign multiple 5-stars on the defensive line and on the edge in next year's class. So that's where they're going to spend the NIL money on the front 7. This class, not so much. At the end of the day, still could be a solid class on the defensive line. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you over on Dawg Post.